Everybody, it's Stereo Police, and I want to begin tonight's video. Well, first of all, I want to tell you that this is part one of two, and this is going to be comparing the Schiit Agir. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing it right. Whatever it's called, Agir. We're looking here at the website on the Agir 2, but I have the 1, which is the one that's heavily biased into Class A. And we're going to be comparing that to the amplifier section of the Luxman. So we're going to be excluding all other aspects of the Luxman. We're just going to feed it directly into the audio amplifier section of the Luxman, which is a Class A amp. So we're just going to be comparing the Schiit solid state Class A amp to the Luxman Class A amp. So it's a battle of transistors biased into Class A. All right, so I'm making a part one because part two is going to be the actual sound samples. That'll be tomorrow night. But I want to talk this up a little bit, and I want to tell you, and I'm going to go in a minute and take some temperature readings. I have both of them baking right now. I want to take a temperature reading of the heat sinks on each of them to see how hot they get. I have a theory, and I'm going to tell you what that theory is in a minute, and the Luxman should get a hell of a lot hotter. But anyway, let's start out with the Schiit Agir. I'm going to say Agir. I don't know how it's pronounced. The Agir 2 is about $900. I don't know how much the 1 costs. It's no longer available, and it's no longer on the Schiit website. But I did pull up a review of it. And the only reason I pulled the review, I wanted to see some of the specs on it, and I wanted to see what makes this special. And the reason why I think it's special is, number one, and let's just say for the sake of argument it was about a $900, or let's say an $800 amplifier, which is remarkably affordable, and I have it in my possession. It's from the outside, it's extremely well built, well crafted, and it, according to the review, produces about 10 watts of pure Class A. And it'll produce about a total of 20 watts into 8 ohms and about 40 watts into 4 ohms, which means outside of 10 watts, it will be biased into Class AB. And I won't get into what that means. I think I may have made a video about that, but I'm interested in Class A. That would be, to me, the purest of audio, the purest of amplification. There's no crossover distortion. And so that's what makes this amplifier special. There are not a lot of amps these days that are available that are purely Class A amplifiers, or or amplifiers that are biased this heavily into Class A. 10 watts is a lot of Class A bias, so I expect there to be quite a bit of heat on those heat sinks, even when there's no music being produced. Because when you're biased that much into Class A, there's going to be a lot of heat being dissipated. Naturally, it has to be. All right. And from the review here, and I just want to go over a couple of things real quick. And Schiit claims they have this something called a continuity circuit. I have no idea what that means. It says technically continuity is a way to eliminate the transconductance droop outside of the Class A region, but they don't explain what this means. And I've read this before, and they don't have a white paper on it, and they don't really explain what this means. So to me, this is just marketing mumbo jumbo. Um, Anyone that, and there's no patent on it, by the way. I looked up to see if they had a patent on this. They don't. If they did, I would have pulled the patent and read it, or even if it's a published patent pre-grant pub, I would have read it and told you what this means. They don't. So it's marketing mumbo jumbo, and um, anyone who's serious about their technology will completely explain it. And even in the sciences, whenever you invent something, or you discover something, or you research something, you produce a paper, and then you have it peer reviewed. You lay it all out there. You give it all you have, and you lay everything out there, and you have your peers review it. You want people to validate what you've done. But when it comes to marketing, when it comes to companies marketing things, they come up with these really fancy things like continuity circuits and transconductance droop elimination and all this stuff. But they don't explain how it's done. So if they're not going to do that for we engineers to fact check them, then I'm just going to call it marketing mumbo jumbo. All right. So the only thing I can see that makes this amp special is that it's heavily biased into Class A, which I'm a believer in. And it is a transistor amp, and I can't see here what kinds of output transistors they're using. I have to believe it's BJTs, bipolar junctions, and not MOSFETs. If it was MOSFETs, they'd probably say it, because they're generally more expensive. And that would be a marketing ploy, I guess. I'm going to roll back over to the Azure 2 just to, and before I get to the Luxman, just to show you an example of more marketing mumbo jumbo. In the Azure 2, they've introduced something called the Halo. And you want to talk about mumbo jumbo. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. Halo is a mixed mode feedback topology that incorporates your loudspeaker into the gain stage, motion control. Okay, they don't explain how this works. There's no white paper on it. I can't fact check it. Every amplifier actually has as part of its. I'm trying to put this into plain language. As part of its workings, the loudspeaker is part of its circuitry. So it's almost like saying the axiomatic here. And then here it says, some have claimed improved measurement performance. Who? Tell me who. Who have claimed this? What? One of your engineers' wives? I don't know who. Again, I can't fact check it. But we haven't been able to confirm that. Well, I bet you haven't. This is marketing mumbo jumbo, folks. I'm not saying it's a bad amp. I'm just saying this is marketing mumbo jumbo. And this is the Azure 2. Again, back to the continuity. They have a trademark, but not a patent that I can find. You can trademark anything. To eliminate the transconductance, I can't, in the Class A bias. So they're not claiming that this Azure 2 is heavily biased in the Class A anymore. In fact, they're claiming less heat. Well, if they're claiming less heat, that probably means it's a Class AB amp and no longer a Class A amp. You cannot eliminate the heat from the Azure 1 unless you bias it down into Class AB from Class A. Well, that makes this less special to me. Okay, refined classic design, 100% linear supply. That means it's not a switching supply. Okay, linear supplies are as old as the hills. 600 VA toroidal, that's not much. It's nothing to brag about. Um, Schottky rectifiers, well, they've been around as forever. No big deal there. They're using regulation. It makes a nice stiff power supply. I have no problem with that. Although I'm kind of a firm believer in, to some degree, not to regulate the power supply, because regulation is a speed bump with respect to current draw when it's needed. No Class D. Well, okay, that's cool. I'm not a fan of Class D. No switching supplies. Well, no shit. If you said it's 100% linear, then saying no switching is saying the same thing. Okay. Improves standby mode. All right. Well, that's wonderful. I don't need to know that. So they're not saying anything about Class A in the Azure 2, so they're not hyping that up. In fact, less heat means little to no Class A. So I'm going to say this is not as special as the Azure 1 with respect to Class A. All right. So that's what makes this special, and that's why I'm interested in it. I will say the sample I have on hand has excellent build quality, and compared to the tube amp in my previous video, compared to the Lab 12 Suono, it held its own. So I'm not criticizing it. But I do want to compare it to a solid state to make things fair. So I'm going to compare it to the amplifier section of the Luxman. You know, the Luxman is a full-on integrated amp with phono stage and everything in between. But I'm not going to use any of that. I'm going to push the button that says separate right here and feed my system only into the amplifier section. And what makes the amp section special here is, okay, it's Class A, and it's rated at 30 watts of pure Class A as opposed to the 10 watts we get. So I expect this Luxman, and they're both baking right now in idle, to get a hell of a lot hotter. The heat sinks to get a hell of a lot hotter. We'll go take some measurements in a minute. Another thing that makes the Luxman really special, which I think is awesome, is the only distortion negative feedback. Negative feedback to me has always been the weak link of amplification. And rather than get into details of why, maybe I'll make a video about that someday. And there's something they said here I read earlier. Let me see if I can find it. Achieve a mellow, expressive sound, increased density. They said something about slew rate here. Oh yeah. Features a primary fast slew rate. See, this is what I love about the Japanese. There's no bullshit here. This is actually factual. If you're going to only feedback distortion and not the whole signal, then that will increase the slew rate. That's factual. The slew rate of a signal, which is not just related to audio, it's related to anything electrical engineering, is the ability of a signal. Let's take, for example, a square wave. Its ability to rise to its peak level, how fast it rises. You know, it doesn't rise from low level to high level at an infinite rate. There's a rate, like the slope of a hill. And when you have negative feedback, that will negatively influence the slew rate. And if you're only feeding back distortion and not the whole signal, that will assist the slew rate and make it faster. And that's a benefit. That's a positive benefit. And only feeding back distortion is awesome. That is a fantastic way to go. Why feedback the whole signal when really you only need to feedback in a negative manner distortion, because that's the only thing you need to cancel. This is a fantastic circuit from Luxman. You know, it's in terms of audio, this is excellent engineering. So it makes this special too. So Luxman is very, very special. And again, it uses 3 parallel push-pull Darlington type, which is, well, I made a video about Darlington pairs. It's excellent topology. Again, I think most of us, and it's also made in Japan. And I think most of we audiophiles have respect for Japanese gear actually made in Japan. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. So, and of course, I love Made in America too. And Schiit is made in California, made in America. So it's going to be a good comparison. It's a fair comparison. Um, Again, the Luxman is much more expensive, but it's also an integrated amp with a high quality phono stage and everything in between. And I'm only going to be using the amplifier section, which are these little boards right here. So, it's a fair enough comparison. Of course, the Luxman is a little, even though I'm only using the amplifier section, is a bit more expensive of an amp, but still a fair enough comparison. Let's see, how the two compare. But that's what makes this special. All right. And again, tomorrow night I'm going to do the sound samples. But let's go. I'm going to hit cut here in a minute. And I have high hopes for the Schiit in its comparison to the Luxman. I mean, if it performs 80 to 90% as good as the Luxman, it is a bargain through the roof. No doubt about it. I don't expect it to equal. Hey, if it equals, who knows? And I also want to compare the Schiit to I forgot to load this up, to the Akitika. Which one do I own? Yeah, the GT104. I want to compare it to the GT104 that I recently purchased and made a few videos about, which is the discrete version. The one that I find to be fantastic. And you're looking at the GT104 right here. You can see that there's the discrete MOSFET output transistors right here. So I'm going to do a three-way comparison. And by the way, the Akitika is cheaper, less expensive. I won't say cheaper. I'll say less expensive than the Schiit. So we'll go both ways. The Schiit gets compared to a more expensive amp and a less expensive. We're going to go both ways. What makes this special? I've already made a full video about this. You can go back and look about the topology, about the design, about the designer, who's very gifted, and about the sound. This thing is fantastic. So this is a very special amp, the Akitika GT104. I bought the 8 ohm version, not the 4 ohm version. There's two versions. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to hit cut now. Let's go just I'm going to wrap this up by taking some temperature measurements on the heat sinks of both the Schiit Azure as well as the Luxman. Just for craps and giggles to see what the temperature difference on the heatsink of a 30 watt Class A amp is versus a 10 watt Class A amp is. Just for fun. And then tomorrow night, I'm going to wrap this up. Then tomorrow night, we're going to do the actual sound samples. Time permitting, I hope. Hope you guys found this interesting, and I hope you look forward to things to come. Stereo Police. Okay. I've been baking the Schiit. I've been baking the Luxman. So let's start out with the, I gotta take my glasses off. Okay. Start out with the top cover, and then let's go over to the heat sinks. What do we have here? 109 degrees on the heat sinks. I'll roll up and down, see if we get any different. 105, 109 in the middle, 107 towards the back, 112 towards the back. Let's go to the right hand side, 106 towards the front, towards the middle, 110 towards the back, 114 on, hey, the right side is hotter than the left side. 113 on the left side, towards the middle, 110, 109. And the top cover, 105. All right, let's go to the front panel just for craps. 100 degrees on the front panel. Okay, let's go to the Luxman. On the very top cover, 82 degrees, nice and cool. Let's go into the heat sinks. 135 degrees, just like I thought. Big time. Let's go towards the back of the heat sink. 135, 135. Let's go towards the middle. Let's go towards the front of the heat sink. Consistently 135, 137, 136. Pretty consistent. 138. Let's go to the right channel. 136, 140. I don't know what I was hitting there. I'm going through a grill here, so I can't tell what I'm hitting. But I know I'm hitting the heat sinks. 141, 145. 140, 141, 148, 140. Let's go to the left side again. I'll tilt the 130, 146. Okay, I'm tilting the I'm tilting the gun differently now, so I'm getting in between the fins. 140, 140. All right, we're roughly in the low 140s. And I can tell you folks, it's bacon. We're in the low 140s here, and what were we here? About 112, 108. Big difference. Remember, this thing's heavily biased into Class A up to 30 watts a channel, only biased into Class A up to 10 watts a channel here. A lot more heat. This thing right here is producing, this will heat your house. Well, heat your room. This right here, I can touch these heat sinks directly. I can't touch these directly. Oh yeah, but even with the grills over top of them, I can barely keep my hand there. Barely keep my hand there. So we have the Luxman. Again, I'm going to give you the sound samples last night. And the way this works is to use the amplifier section. I just plug the output of my preamp into the main in right here. And of course, you run the speakers. Okay, I'll be using speaker A. But you run the output of the preamp into main in. And then you select separate, which I have selected right now because it's lit up separate. And I go line straight, which bypasses all the tone controls. It's the purest. And of course, the Schiit is an amplifier, so you don't need to do that. It's inherently an amplifier, so we're ready to rock and roll. All right. Hope you found that enjoyable. Tomorrow night, this will just be a little teaser. Tomorrow night we'll do the sound samples, and I'll have to go dig out my Akitika. I don't know where the Akitika is. I'll have to go dig that out. The GT 104, and we'll compare Schiit to Luxman to Akitika. Sound samples between all three, and what I'll do is let you decide. It's kind of my new MO, is I'll let you decide. And yeah, let's just do that. All right, Stereo Police. Hope you enjoyed it. How we hear things is a very individual thing, and I just don't want to bias you. I want you to decide from here on out, unless I hear something horrendous. If I hear something horrendous, I'm going to let you know. But if it's close, I'll discuss the closeness of it, yeah, but I want you to decide first. Stereo Police, I love you. Ciao.